Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita. Ever catch yourself, online shopping on a smoggy day, and you just maybe feel kind of like a little urge to splurge? Well, get this. There might actually be a link between bad air quality and how much money we spend.
Wow.
Today, we're diving into a research article you sent our way.
Oh, cool.
The Impact of Air Pollution on Consumer Spending by Kim and Trusov.
Okay.
Published just last year. And trust me, the findings are pretty surprising.
It really makes you think, right? Like about the connection between our environment and our spending habits. We know air pollution is a huge global health issue.
Right.
The World Health Organization actually reported that 99% of the world population is breathing unsafe air.
Yeah, that's a mind-blowing statistic. I remember reading the American Lung Association's report. Here in the U.S., over 135 million people are exposed to unsafe levels of air pollution.
Yeah.
That's a huge number. But this study goes beyond just the health impacts.
Right.
And looks at how air quality affects our wallets,
Yeah.
specifically our daily spending.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that they found that air pollution might actually be causing people to spend more money.
More money. That seems counterintuitive. Wouldn't you think people would maybe stay home more? Tighten their belts when the air is bad?
It's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the types of purchases people are making. We need to think about the difference between what are called hedonic and utilitarian purchases.
Okay, so hedonic versus utilitarian. Help me out here.
Okay. So imagine this.
Okay.
You're having a bad day. The air quality is terrible. You're feeling a bit down.
Yeah.
A hedonic purchase is something that brings you pleasure or enjoyment, maybe like a new video game or a fancy coffee, concert ticket, that sort of thing. It's about indulging yourself a bit.
Okay.
A utilitarian purchase, on the other hand, is more practical. It's something you need groceries, your rent payment.
Gotcha. So are you saying that people are more likely to buy fun stuff, the hedonic things, when the air is bad?
Exactly. The study found that the increase in spending was mainly driven by those hedonic purchases.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting, but I'm still a little confused. Why would bad air quality lead to people wanting to buy more fun things? It seems like it should be the opposite.
It's surprising, right? The researchers believe it could be about mood regulation.
Okay.
Think about it. Bad air can contribute to a bad mood.
Yeah.
So people might subconsciously be trying to cheer themselves up by buying things that bring them joy.
So the worse the air quality, the more tempted we might be by those little treats that make us feel better in the moment? Interesting. But how did they actually figure this out? How could they be sure it was the air pollution causing this effect on spending and not something else?
The researchers used a really clever method with wind direction and speed data to isolate the effect of air pollution. They focused on South Korea for this study.
Yeah.
It turns out that a lot of the air pollution there is blown in from mainland Asia.
So by looking at wind patterns, they could separate out the impact of the air pollution that was locally generated versus the pollution that was blown in from elsewhere. Pretty smart.
Right. And because nearly everyone in South Korea uses credit cards, they had a huge data set of transactions to work with. They combined that with daily air quality readings,
Right.
specifically the Air Quality Index, or AQI.
Okay, so I've heard of the AQI, but could you explain it a bit more? How does it work?
It's essentially a way to measure how polluted the air is, using a scale that runs from 0 to 500.
Right.
The higher the AQI, the worse the air quality. Different levels on the scale correspond to different health concerns. So a higher AQI means a greater risk to public health.
So what did they find when they compared the AQI to spending habits?
Their analysis showed that for every 100-point increase in the AQI, there was a 2.45% increase in daily spending.
2.45%, that doesn't sound like a lot.
Maybe not at first glance, but it translates to an average of 65 cents more per person per day. Now imagine that across millions of people.
Okay, yeah, suddenly that seems like a much bigger deal. And I bet this has some pretty big implications for retailers too, right? Like, could they be using this information to their advantage?
Absolutely. Imagine walking into a store on a day when the air quality is bad,
Yeah.
and you're bombarded with displays for gourmet snacks, comfy clothes, or aromatherapy candles, all things designed to offer a little mood boost.
It's almost like retailers could be capitalizing on bad air quality to drive sales of those feel-good items.
It's definitely something to think about. And it's not just brick and mortar stores either. Think about targeted ads popping up on your phone, maybe for spa days, streaming services, takeout deals, all perfectly timed for when the air quality dips.
That's kind of unsettling, isn't it? Are we all just pawns in some grand scheme to buy more stuff when we're feeling down about the air quality? I mean, it's not like we can control the air we breathe.
That's a great point, and it raises an important question. Is this type of marketing ethical?
Yeah, I mean, are businesses taking advantage of a situation that's already bad for people's health? And what can we as consumers do about it?
Well, before we get into the ethics of it all, let's dig a little deeper into the study itself.
Okay.
You mentioned that they focused on South Korea.
Yeah.
But do we know if these findings would apply elsewhere?
Right, because South Korea is just one country, and there could be cultural factors at play. So did the researchers look at other countries at all?
They did. They actually conducted a controlled experiment with participants from the U.S.
Interesting.
to explore the mood regulation aspect further.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
So they created two scenarios, one simulating a polluted environment
Okay.
and one with fresh air.
Okay.
They showed these scenarios to different groups of participants and then asked them about their willingness to spend money on various items.
So did they find the same pattern?
Right.
That people in the polluted scenario were more likely to spend money?
They did. But here's where it gets even more interesting. They divided the purchase options into those same categories we talked about earlier, hedonic and utilitarian.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. People in the polluted scenario were more likely to splurge on the fun hedonic stuff, right?
You got it. The effect was particularly strong for the hedonic purchases. They even measured the participants' need for positive affect, which is essentially a gauge of their desire to improve their mood.
And I'm guessing the people who were exposed to the polluted scenario had a higher need for positive affect, and therefore were more likely to spend on things they thought would cheer them up.
Exactly. That need for positive affect seems to be the key factor here.
Okay.
It suggests that either consciously or unconsciously, people are trying to compensate for the negative feelings brought on by bad air quality by treating themselves.
Okay, so we've got this study from South Korea and a supporting experiment from the US, both pointing to the same conclusion. Air pollution can make us spend more on things we associate with pleasure or enjoyment. But is there something unique about South Korea and the US? I mean, what about other cultures? Could this effect be different in places where people have different spending habits or different ways of coping with stress?
That's a really interesting question. And it's something the researchers acknowledge as a limitation of their study. They focused on South Korea and the U.S. partly because of data availability. Remember, they needed that credit card transaction data.
Right.
But they also pointed out that air pollution is a global issue.
Right.
And it's possible that this effect could be even stronger in parts of the world where air pollution is more severe.
It makes sense if people are constantly exposed to bad air quality. Maybe that constant need for mood regulation would lead to even more spending on hedonic items, potentially even contributing to debt or financial problems. I hadn't even thought about that angle.
It's definitely something to consider. And it also raises questions about the bigger picture. I mean, if we're all spending more to try and feel better because of bad air quality, is that really addressing the root of the problem?
Right. It's almost like we're using shopping as a distraction from the real issue. The fact that the air we're breathing is harmful to our health.
Exactly. And it's not just about the environmental impact of consumerism. Think about all the resources that go into producing and transporting all these goods. It's a bit of a vicious cycle.
Okay, so it seems like we're dealing with a pretty complex issue here. Air pollution is making us feel bad, so we're spending more to try and feel better, which then contributes to more environmental problems.
It's a bit of a mess. Honestly, what can we do about this? Or are we just doomed to keep making impulsive purchases every time the AQI goes up?
Well, awareness is a good first step. Now that we know about this potential influence on our spending habits, we can start to make more conscious decisions. That's true, but what about concrete steps? I mean, next time I'm feeling that urge to buy something I probably don't need on a smoggy day, what should I do? Just close my laptop and walk away?
That's a good start.
Yeah.
But maybe instead of online shopping, you could do something else to improve your mood. Maybe go for a walk in a park if the air quality isn't too bad, or call a friend, or listen to some music.
Right. Find other ways to boost your mood that don't involve buying things. It sounds simple, but I bet it's easier said than done, especially when you're bombarded with ads and marketing messages that are specifically designed to tempt you.
That's where the idea of sustainable marketing comes in. The researchers argue that businesses have a responsibility to use these findings in a way that benefits society, not just their bottom line.
Sustainable marketing. That sounds interesting. Tell me more. Sustainable marketing.
Yeah.
It does sound kind of contradictory, right?
Yeah.
How can marketing, which is all about encouraging people to buy things, be sustainable?
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think it presents a real opportunity. The researchers believe that by understanding how things like air pollution affect us, businesses can develop strategies that are good for both their profits and for people and the planet.
Okay. I'm curious. What would that look like in practice? Give me an example.
So instead of just trying to sell more and more products, retailers could focus on products and services that help people cope with bad air quality in healthy ways.
Like what specifically?
Oh, they mentioned things like air purifiers,
Okay.
house plants that clean the air, maybe even things like guided nature walks or meditation classes that help reduce stress.
So it's about offering solutions to the problem, not just taking advantage of people's desire for a quick fix when they're feeling down.
Exactly. It's a more holistic approach, thinking about the long-term impact on people and the environment.
What about digital marketing? Could that be more sustainable too?
Absolutely. Instead of those annoying ads for things we don't need, digital marketing could be used to educate people about air pollution, promote eco-friendly options, or even encourage people to take action to reduce their own impact.
So using marketing to empower consumers, not just manipulate them. I like that.
And it's not just about the products themselves. It's about building trust and a sense of community. Imagine a company that sponsors park cleanups or tree planting events, or maybe they offer discounts to customers who bike or walk to their store.
That's a great point. It shows they're actually committed to making a difference, not just saying they are.
Yeah, and that can make a big difference in how people view a company.
Right.
These days, people are looking for businesses that share their values.
So sustainable marketing isn't just some fluffy idea. It can actually be a good business strategy.
Exactly, and it's a win-win-win for the business, the customer, and the planet.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about the connection between air pollution, our spending habits, and the role businesses play in all of this. It's a lot more complex than I realized.
It really is, but the important thing is that we all have a role to play in creating a healthier and more sustainable world.
Well said. We can all be more mindful of our choices, both as consumers and as businesses.
And hopefully by understanding these connections, we can make choices that are good for us and good for the planet.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much for breaking it all down for us.
It was my pleasure. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.